action. The waves are crashing on Bayshore Boulevard as we speak, whipped up by the amount of wind that continues to seem to come right out of the south, blowing on, I can tell you, very, very windy out here now. We've probably seen the strongest gusts of wind that we've experienced all night. So I know that the storm has kind of moved north of the parallel that it would be with Tampa. But the wind that's whipping around it and the squalls that are following it, that tail effect, are absolutely whipping up the water and the wind in downtown Tampa. I continue to see blue light in the sky. Those transformers are blowing in the Tampa area. I imagine that there are people without electricity. Where we are, the street lights continue to be on. TGH has its own power, so even if the lights went out, they would still have power. By the way, I'm just going to stop for a second. You can see this is another one of those emergency vehicles pulling over the Davis Islands Bridge right now as we speak. So we've seen that, a course of that throughout the course of the evening. But this is the amount of water that we've seen. An enormous amount of water pushing up out of the bay onto Bayshore Boulevard in volumes that I personally have not seen. Again, we've seen rainstorms. I've been out here at times where it's impassable, up to your hip, as they say. And earlier today, we did sort of see that as the rush of water started to come in from the surge, but not with this sort of wind, not with this sort of push, not with the energy that is literally creating action along Bayshore Boulevard. Guys, I'm going to send it back to you.
Eric, thank you so much for those great visuals telling that story there. And I want to remind you, as you see what Eric's showing you out there, that water level is from a storm that was 100 miles offshore when it went by Tampa. The 15 to 20 foot surge is going to be up in here. There's a sheriff up in here that just said, if you know anybody that decided to stay, tell them to write their name and social security number on their arm with a Sharpie, because they retrieve their body afterwards. They think it's going to be that bad. That was the threat with Ian. And if you remember how we were all thinking a day before Ian made landfall, we thought it was hitting Tampa, right? It went down to Fort Myers instead. We just got record. Eric said himself, he hasn't seen surge like this that's setting records, right? It's been decades. We got to go back to 1921. That was probably worse. I don't think we have all the records for that because it was so long ago. But we got hit at Tarpon Springs in 1921, and that really did a number on us. It was a Cat 3 storm. If something like this had to hit us, take what you see out there right now and at least double it. At least. So here we are. We're setting records. We're going to go about 4 to 6, 4 to 7 foot amount of surge out there. We had 2 to 4 with the Dahlia, and we actually dodged a bullet, believe it or not. So these poor folks up here, about an hour and a half. Well, actually, it's getting a little bit closer than that right now. I think that's going to be less than an hour before it makes landfall. In fact, let me run over there right now because, I just kind of looked up. That was quick, Colleen. I didn't.
That outer eye wall is starting to move onto the coast now.
It's getting there right now. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, I'm going to put a measuring tool in here. So from the center of the eye, we're talking less than 30 miles from the center. And
the worst part, here you can drive on that one there. The worst part is going to be this area on the right side, right here. Horseshoe Beach area, and then up towards Perry, which is right about right there. They're getting the highest winds right here on this northeast quadrant and a little bit on the top. It's actually because they're moving 20 some miles an hour and the wind's blowing the opposite direction there. There's the center. You can see about 28 miles from land. It's going right up about there. Draw that one. And so that would put it less than an hour. That's probably about 30 miles or so. And it's moving 24. What's it still moving at now? I think it's 24 miles per hour.
Yeah,
so technically the center would be there in about an hour, but the business end of the thing is coming through right now, right? Now, Tallahassee. Colleen, if you don't mind, let's zoom this out just a little bit. I know a lot of parents got kids up there in Tallahassee, a lot of friends and family up there. Here they are. They will be on the back side of this, but they are going to get a good hurricane coming through there. All right, it's going to be northeast winds for them. They're getting east to northeast right now, but they're going to get a lot of wind. They're not going to get the 140 that you're seeing here on this thing, but there's going to be some winds well over 100 miles per hour, I think, in the Tallahassee area. And that's going to do a lot of damage there. So that's the issue. But this area right in here where Perry is and then down towards Cross City, they're getting it right now. Crystal River, some of the heaviest winds are pushing through the area right now, and so obviously some of the surge is really coming up. Even if we pan down just a little bit more towards the south, even in the Tampa Bay area, the water levels that we're seeing down here in the bay are still coming up. They're still coming up. I do think, though, we're about an hour or two away from them kind of cresting and then slowly going down just a little bit. But this thing is just about ready to make landfall here. Spotty rainfall now across the area. That trend will continue. Talking to some friends who are like, I think we did good. You know, most folks that live inland. And I look at these rain bands, and I think we are looking pretty good. They will be cutting back that tornado watch here soon, but I'm not letting go of that for a while. We do want to keep an eye on some of those cells, as we could have still a few spin ups. The wind will stay onshore. It will be slowly coming down, but as Eric said, there's some gust, and if we could zoom out just a little bit and then hit that water vapor button if you get a chance, maybe go out a little bit more, because one of the concerns, we were talking earlier about some drier air getting in here. Yeah, we're gonna have to go out a lot more, I guess, now. There you go. See that orange there? That is drier air, and it's going to be pulled in back on the back side of this. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's not enough to eat away at this, which normally it would. It's too late for that at this point. It will help eventually. But drier air is a little bit thicker, a little bit denser, and you can actually have winds just blowing even higher on the back side of this. Downburst winds. And so that's also playing a role in keeping our winds up and keeping them gusty for the next 3 hours or so, through about 1 to 2 in the morning. I think we've seen closer to some of the peak gusts that we're going to see, upper 70s to near 80. We might see a couple more, obviously along the immediate coast, but because we're getting a little bit of mix of this dry air in here eventually, that's going to keep some of those winds gusty as we go through the overnight hours. So the overall wind will be slowly coming down, but we're definitely keep some good gusts. And I tell you what, then it's going to be really interesting to see what this does up in the Panhandle, especially into Georgia, because we've got basically those hurricane warnings almost up to Atlanta at this point. Courtney, Dave, they're starting to see, you can see where we had this one watch earlier, how it got trimmed back. That'll be the case here later in the next couple of hours. We'll start to drop that off just a little bit.
You know, Bobby, as you're talking about that, Dave and I were over here. It's such a different storm because I think so often we've talked about the wind element, you know, the storm with the winds and the fact that this is just so much water. I don't remember, you know, and I know that this is a different level of water, but I don't remember a storm where we were like saying that, you know, there's just gonna be so much water. And don't worry, I mean, the wind, as we've seen it, yes, there have been trees down, but it hasn't been as damaging.
Yeah, all these hurricanes are different. They have their own kind of identity, and that's what makes it tough. And when people say they're not evacuating because they went through a hurricane, a category 2 or 3 or 4, and say I'm not evacuating because everything was fine. All these storms are different. Sometimes the storm surge, like from this particular storm, is the major problem. Sometimes it's the wind. So if you've survived one hurricane doesn't mean you're going to survive the next or the next.
And it's such a massive storm too, with that surge that we're seeing it, you know, really in so many of our communities and different levels. Citrus County is one of those areas where we are expecting, you know, our northernmost county in Tampa Bay, where we're really expecting the most surge, potentially 12 feet or more.
Yeah, as we go to the north, it gets more difficult, more challenging for folks up there. Aaron Parsegian is in Crystal River tonight, keeping an eye on things there. Aaron, are you seeing the surge taking place there? Are you seeing the water rise?
Well, Dave and Courtney, we've been keeping a close eye on things for the last several hours, and we are slowly starting to see the water rise here in Kings Bay. This is that area that we kind of watch for when you're talking about storm surge. This is where water will start splashing over here as that wind brings it in. It started off actually lower in the day, and now we're starting to slowly see it rise. So we're keeping a close eye on this seawall behind me, if you can see that while I'm putting the flashlight on it. We want to be really cautious if that water starts to come over that and come close to it. We were talking to some of the locals around here who've been through a storm or 2 or 3 even in the past year alone, who say once that water starts coming over the seawall, it's about 15 minutes before we have to get out of here and go to higher ground. That just gives you an idea of how quick that surge can happen. Obviously, people have been kind of waiting around all day, waiting to see that happen, and now we are slowly watching that water begin to rise as this wind continues to pick up and blow here in Crystal River. So that's something we're keeping a close eye on through the night, through the hours. And this is an area that's been inundated by storm surge and flooding before. It was last year, Hurricane Idalia brought 7 feet of storm surge going to homes, businesses all around Kings Bay and Crystal River here, causing a lot of damage. Some people are still recovering from today. So there's a lot of anxiety as we go through the night and it gets darker and darker, and they try to figure out just how much this water will be coming up into these neighborhoods.
Aaron, thanks very much, and I know you're going to take precautions out there. It's always a little nerve-wracking when you're covering these things because things can change quickly, and I'm glad you're keeping track of that out there. I'm Dave Wagner along with Courtney Robinson here. We are 10 Tampa Bay. Want to let you know we are among those who had to evacuate. Our studios are on the St. Pete side of the Gandy Bridge. When water is in danger of inundating the building, we have to leave. So we've moved to higher ground in Tampa. That's where we are right now. We're safe and sound. We hope you are too. We know there are some people out there in harm's way, and we know a lot of you did not anticipate that it would be this bad. Not everybody keeps up with, not everybody watches every single newscast or is on social media. Some people aren't completely aware, and I've discovered that just by talking to people and letting them know, hey, we got a hurricane coming. It's like, oh, really? Had no idea.
I told you, I mean, I was off on Monday and Tuesday, took personal days, and it was so interesting. People going, wait, there's a storm? Oh, I just realized that there's a storm, or why is the water gone?
Sure.
And so, so not every step of the way, and things have changed throughout the day, just in the last hour or two, not just with the water rising, but even that wind kind of changing as well. And really, since this morning with Hurricane Helene waking up with a Category 2, then a Category 3, and now we have a Category 4 storm in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right, and the storm surge is continuing to rise right now. So the water levels are going to get worse in some areas, which is unfortunate. I want to give you a unique view right now of this hurricane. This is from above. This is from the International Space Station, about 250 miles above Earth right here. The International Space Station orbits Earth in about 93 minutes, but it was able to take this picture, and you see both the beauty and terrifying picture here of this storm. Look at that, just looking right, and you get an idea of just how big this is. Hundreds of miles this storm is. Really every part of the state of Florida in one way or another is impacted by this storm.
And Bobby, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm trying to remember exactly what you said earlier when we look at this, and you can see the magnitude of it. You said potentially the largest storm recorded with Helene's wind field?
No, not the largest recorded, but twice. We were comparing it to other storms.
Okay.
So the people have an idea why we were going to get the surge we're going to get.
Okay.
It would be about 150 miles wider than the storm winds with Idalia.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow, and that was a big storm too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Over 450 miles wide.
So as this goes north, Bobby, talk about this storm as it kind of heads north. It's going to hit Florida. It's going to hit up there in Tallahassee area, around that area. It's going to cause a lot of damage, a lot of flooding. But then it's going to move north. How far can this storm move? I mean, what states? We have a lot of people from out of state here. People have moved here from out of state. People are visiting from out of state. How far north do you think this storm?
Some people have evacuated out of state.
Absolutely, And how far north do you think this is going to move?
Well, see, and that's the other thing. When we ask people to evacuate tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, right? Because if you drive right in where it's going, it's coming to get you there. Let's take a look at our forecast track. So the pinkish red that you see here, those are hurricane warnings. Okay. The blue are tropical storm warnings. Here it is right now, 140 mile per hour. The pressure's down to 939. That's impressive. Meteorologists geek out on that stuff. That is low. But this will move up to the north. And so here we go. You can see it. Atlanta's right here. They just about have hurricane. They could see hurricane gusts in Atlanta, and that's amazing. But this whole southwest part of Georgia is going to get it. Now, then it goes up into the mountains. Some places in here, we're going to end up with 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. Some places in the mountains are going to end up with 15 plus inches of rain. North Georgia, something like that, okay? Then it goes out and it does a loop here, and as it's falling apart, and then kind of drifts off towards the east. What you are seeing here in the blue and the red are basically wind warnings. The blue is tropical storm wind, force winds, 39 to 73. that pinkish area, that is basically 74 mile per hour winds or higher. Most of that will be in gusts. I don't think we'll get steady winds, all that, but there will be certainly spots in South Georgia that could get 75 mile per hour sustained winds. That's amazing. And that's because it's moving at 24 miles per hour. So it'll start to fall apart as soon as it goes over land. But if it's not spending a lot of time over one spot, it's just going to continue to move and fall apart at about the same rate, but it's going to be falling apart further inland because of that move. So a lot of friends, a lot of family up in the southeast will be dealing with this. There's also that tornado threat all the way up through here as well. Haven't said much about South Carolina, but the high country of South Carolina, they're going to get a ton of rain too. And it could be pretty bad as far as the flooding goes. And then in these areas, first initially you get the heavy rainfall in the mountains, and that causes flash flooding because it's the relief, right? You got the valleys, and it rains on the sides of those mountains, it all goes right down to the valleys, and it just rips down through the bottom there. That's the initial thing that happens in the mountains. That water's all going down to the rivers and eventually trying to make it down to the coast. The rivers in South Carolina, not only in high part of it, but the low country is going to start to fill up eventually. That takes 2-3 days after the storm goes by. And Carolina Beach right here where the N is in Wilmington just got 20 inches of rainfall with that system a week and a half ago. So potentially some spots in North Carolina, it could be 2 spots in North Carolina, Carolina Beach and somewhere out there northwest of Charlotte that see almost 20 inches of rainfall in about a week and a half. That is a ton of moisture, and that is affecting a lot of people. And again, you've got just about the entire state of Florida with at least a tropical storm warning in it. And you see all of this red on the backside. That's a lot of wind still. That's a lot of rain, and that's just going to be feeding out over that warm water even after the center is on land. So it's just going to take a while for all of this really to fall apart. And by a while, I would say about 24 hours before it really comes down. In fact, let me go back and show you what you got.
I was just going to say, we just got the 10 o'clock update in, and the pressure dropped from 941 to 939. So slight little change there.
Yep. And so look at this wind here by tomorrow morning at 2 a.m. I mean, it's just a few hours. 105 mile per hour winds over top of South Georgia, right? And then tomorrow afternoon, it really drops down, but it's over East Tennessee with 45 mile per hour winds. So just kind of do the math, and you're going to get those highest winds right in there. Yeah, that's why it's going to affect so many people and take out, I want to say, it's a hard thing to say. It's not taking a lot of time. It's just moving so fast, it's going to cover a lot of geography and bring hurricane force winds to a lot of people that don't typically see it. Guys, the other thing about the wind that we're seeing right now, that will stay up a little bit, but generally what's going to happen is some of these rain bands are going to stick around, and the overall wind will slowly start coming down, especially after 2 in the morning. But when you get these rain bands, we will keep some good gusts, and I'm talking gusts in the 30s, perhaps even in the 40s. They won't last long, it won't be a steady thing, but because we have these rain bands and they'll keep streaming through the area, we will see some of that last into the, I'd say, early dawn hours or so.
And Bobby, looking at that right there, we said around 10 o'clock we would see that landfall. Where are we looking timing-wise right now for people who are looking for family up in the Tallahassee area?
Landfall's probably going to be closer to about 11:45, midnight.
Okay.
That's technically the center, but the northern eye wall is coming on right now. That area right there is moving onshore. So they're getting 100, 130 mile per hour winds, I would say, in some of those spots. Are just about ready to get that, especially over here on the right side. That's wind just going straight into the coast, and that's where the highest surge is going to be too. That's 15 to 20 feet. We're seeing 4 to 6. They're seeing 4 to 5 times that. Well, 4 times that.
Yeah, I mean, you see the damage we are seeing around here. Can you imagine 4 times the damage up to the north of us?
Fortunately, not quite as populated, low-lying kind of rural area, but there are some. And I mean, that's why we say get ready, be prepared. Because if this happened in Fort Myers, it almost happened here with Ian. Instead it went to Fort Myers. It could have happened here this time, right? We don't know at the beginning of every season where anything's going to form. We don't know once it forms where it's going to go. We know what can happen when it hits. And we know that it can hit us. And so that's why you're always seeing us saying the same old things. Have your hurricane kit, have your plan, get ready to go, and just hope that we don't have to deal with it. So it's going to be a lot of cleanup.
All right, Bobby, thank you. And, we're still looking at the radar right there, you can see it. We're feeling those impacts still. We're going to continue to feel that as that water still pushes inland, pushes on shore.
Yeah, Chris Hurst has joined us live again from Venice. Chris, when we last left you, the water was continuing to rise. Are you still seeing the water rising there?
Dave, Courtney, the water level seems to be stabilizing, at least for the time being, potentially even going down. But the lights for this whole stretch of downtown Venice and the Tamiami Trail just went out about 90 seconds ago. So we had ample lighting to see what was going on with this floodwater from Roberts Bay and from Donna Bay coming up over the Tamiami Trail. And now all you can really see is that street light and then the cars that are still trying to pass through this water. Now, there is one that is stalled. It's a convertible. I went up and talked to the guy, asked him if he needed any help. He said that he's going to call a tow truck, call his insurance company, call the authorities. They haven't been out here yet, though, so that car is still there. Looks like there's another car that may be trying to assist him, but now we do have stalled cars here on the Tamiami Trail in Venice as you're heading out towards Inglewood and Business 41. And Dave, Courtney, the fella here who's with his wife, the Purple Heart veteran who was and the lights just came back on. The generator power has kicked back on here in downtown Venice. We talked to the couple. They own these homes that are right off my shoulder here, and they came back because they simply just wanted to check and see what it looked like inside. And he said, it does not look very good. Now, what he did say, though, positively, was that the water went from about mid-thigh. It's gone down a few inches back down to his knee. But, of course, the tide is still rising here. It is expected to crest for high tide. It's about 11:50 midnight or so, Tim. I think that's right for what high tide is. But we do have the lights that have kicked back on, just the generator lights, right? So it's not all of the street lighting that had been up here. It's just these overhead lights, these auxiliary lights. But we still have people that are trying to drive through this floodwater here in downtown Venice. We know that so many coastal roadways and communities in Sarasota and Manatee counties are inundated with storm surge right now. The wind has died down a little bit, but still consistently in the 30 and 40 mile per hour range, gusts even higher than that. Again, continuing to push this water more into inland areas. But at least for right now, the water level, Dave and Courtney, seems to be stabilizing, maybe even going down. We'll see how much as we approach high tide, maybe that water level comes back up again.
Yeah, and thank you for checking on that couple, Chris. It's very nice of you. I know that's two people, and a lot of folks are in harm's way tonight, but we want to make sure as many people as possible are safe and accounted for.
Yeah. I don't know if we still have Chris. If we do, I'm curious. Chris, we still have you. You've been through several of these storms, and I think Longboat Key is one area where you've been out. We were not able to be out there. Have you been able to check in with anybody that you know, any sources out there to see kind of how these areas are doing, what it's looking like in terms of that surge?
Well, so we do know that Longboat Key, particularly on the bay side, is very vulnerable and susceptible. We would expect that any similar flooding, we heard this from Sarasota County and also, I believe, Venice officials, that if you had flooding during Idalia, if you even had flooding during Debbie, you might expect that there would be some flooding as well. We know that St. Armand Circle and areas that are up farther north of that in Manatee County. Here, I'm going to step out a little bit just as we continue to have more cars. Actually, wow, so they're dragging this convertible out.
Wow.
A Good Samaritan came by in this big Jeep and is carrying the first car that got flooded out here on the Tamiami Trail. And so at least we are able to move this car out of the way. And the driver is in the car, and he's okay. I talked to him, but obviously he's very upset. He had this car for about a year, he said, and now he might just have to try and strip it or salvage it for parts. So one thing too, Dave and Courtney, that I also forgot to mention is that there also were a couple of people that were here in the median. There are neighborhoods that are in front of me that are now underwater. I talked to two fellas who said that their mother was in there and needed to be rescued, and that an ambulance came just in the last half hour, and they said that she was rescued from her home. So right where we are in downtown Venice, we already are seeing some rescues of people from their homes, and clearly cars now that are getting stuck here in this rising water.
Yeah, whether or not it's a simple home out there or a nice Mercedes like that, everybody's concerned about their property and making sure they get through this okay. So tough time for a lot of people.
Yeah, and we're going to see more of those rescues and more of this moving forward as well in a lot of counties. And they have the teams that are out there ready to deploy as soon as it's safe, or if it's safe right now, they are going in and helping where they can. You know, one other area where we've just seen a ton of water, Dave. I mean, I texted Eric Glasser earlier. My jaw dropped looking at Bayshore Boulevard. We've seen the water there, but it was the washing machine that I talked about right there. And I think we have that. Do we have a live look there at Bayshore Boulevard? Yep, there it is. You might recall earlier, Eric Glasser was down, just past the balustrades as it dips in, the steps that lead down into the bay. And I remember him saying, here I am, and just imagine, 5 feet over my head. Look at this right here.
And look how it's moving there. I mean, just the challenge of, there's just no way that water is going to go where it wants to go and find its way. You just hope that you're not too close to that right now. You just wonder, and you see the lights off in the distance. I believe that is Tampa General Hospital right there. So we were told by Eric that he saw a lot of activity, a lot of ambulances, fire trucks, that kind of thing going into Tampa General Hospital. We also have Miguel Octavio, who is in St. Pete right now. Miguel, you moved to higher ground to avoid some of those floodwaters there. What are you seeing right now? What's it like there?
Well, Dave and Courtney, you both mentioned how strong the wind sounded outside, and I can tell you those winds are getting much stronger. We can really hear the howling of those winds, and we can only imagine what the storm surge looks like closer to the water, where we spent most of our day at Vinoy Park, North Shore Park, and some of those areas that were already flooding when there was daylight out, including Shore Acres. In fact, in this hotel in downtown St. Pete, we'd met a number of people who evacuated from those low-lying coastal areas, including Shore Acres, a lot of them keeping track of their homes right now through their door cameras and the inside as well, and their heart just breaks seeing the flooding going inside, water going inside once again, because it was just more than a year ago when a number of those people were flooded out because of Hurricane Idalia, and they're back here at the same spot. And Pinellas County is warning we still have not reached the peak of the storm surge quite yet, expecting about 5 to 8 feet, and already more than 200,000 people have lost their power. They've gotten several 911 calls over flooding as well. So right now they are just hoping those who evacuated from Zone A evacuated. There's a lot of concern over the barrier islands as well. I just want to show you how strong some of the conditions are over here, but you can really see those trees swaying from that wind. And of course, we can only imagine how the water looks like as of now when we were there, when it was earlier there during the day. But I've been talking to people over text, just checking in with them. Some of them have not evacuated from some of those zones. They wanted to keep track of their homes, but it looks like the water had reached about waist deep level right now in some of those neighborhoods, including Shore Acres. We also spoke to those living in the Edgemore neighborhood. They've been sending me pictures of how their streets looked earlier this morning and how it looked days before. When we checked out some of those streets, they were already flooded, so we can only imagine what those streets look like with the strength of this wind, with the strength of the storm surge as well. Just speaking to some neighbors who evacuated to some of these hotel rooms closer inland, I can tell you their heart is just breaking seeing the water going into their homes once again, and they're just hoping that as we continue to see these conditions, the amount of damage they see is just minimal. But right now, a lot of people just heartbroken at these conditions right now, and first responders are just hoping people are hunkering down somewhere safe where they can be away from the storm surge and the water here. Dave and Courtney.
All right, Miguel, thank you so much. And Miguel, live for us in downtown St. Pete. We want to give you a look at what we're seeing in Gulfport. We have viewers that are kind of sending in photos throughout the evening, and we have one of those pictures, I think, from Denise. And you can just see just how much, there you go, just how much water is there. There was another angle that we were seeing. It's probably more than like a foot and a half is what it looks like, and especially against some of the businesses that we've seen. Just one look at part of our area.
Wow, this is a waterfront community, but this is not what it normally looks like. David Shealy is at the Sponge Docks up in Tarpon Springs for us right now. David, what are you seeing there?
So we were able to make it safely to the docks, and this street is indeed flooded. It is about waist deep. If you were to go way in there, we're obviously not going to step in there. We have a visual of a city truck. Now that truck earlier today was just sitting there. There wasn't anybody in the truck. About 30 minutes ago, you could see the headlights of that truck. You can no longer see the headlights, just so you have an idea, of how high the water has gone. There's also live wires that have gone down, according to the Tarpon Springs Police Department. Some live wires are in this water as well. So there are some people here trying to take pictures, but we're letting them know, stay away from these waters, stay out of the water because there are live wires. Now we were able to meet a business owner, Nick. I'll bring him in here. He's one of the business owners. And Nick, how did you prepare for this storm? And from what you can see, how are things looking for your business right there just behind us?
I mean, you can't really prepare for it. You just gotta ride it out, being that we are in the Sponge Docks area. It's been going on forever, so people try put sandbags in front of their businesses and they try to tape up, they try to do whatever they can. Pretty much just be better if everybody would stop driving by the businesses and with their big lifted trucks and pushing the water further and further into the businesses. Best thing you can do is pretty much just wait it out. I mean, it's typical if you're a Tarpon Springs business owner, in the Sponge Docks especially, that when the storm comes, Tropics never goes underwater. It is completely underwater, so that just goes to show you guys how bad everything is going right here, right now. That white truck was there to prevent people from driving through. It's a city truck. They sacrificed it. And, well, like I said, the only thing we could do is ask people to, care about the businesses and try not to push wake further and make things already worse than they already are.
So this is about the worst you've seen it here on the street.
Absolutely. There was a no-name storm probably in the 90s, I think, that had shrimp boats on top of the bridge over here. But besides that, this is the worst I've ever seen it. Tropics never gets flooded, ever. Sidewalk gets wet at the most, and it's completely underwater inside. So this lets everybody know how bad the rest of the businesses at the end of the street are. They're completely sunk.
We'll continue to wait it out, Nick. Thank you for your time, and stay safe out here.
You too.
Thank you for
Take
your
care.
time. Again, Tarpon Springs, right here at the Sponge Docks. This is a flooded area. Please avoid this area. There are live wires that are down in the water. So if you are trying to be like some folks here, some of our neighbors here are trying to take in the sights of the flood, do not go into the water because of the live wires. For now, in Tarpon Springs at the Sponge Docks, David Shealy in Tampa Bay.
David, thank you. Really great perspective there from Nick, and you can see people now walking behind you as well as they're out there surveying that damage. And a lot of what we're seeing, we can see the level of the water right now, but a lot of that damage we're going to see when we have light and the full scope of what's happened.
David, this is such a tourist destination down there in Tarpon Springs, and some of these people cater to the tourists. I know they have seen flooding there before, as Nick mentioned there. Do you know how far down, how many businesses, do you have a sense as to how many are impacted? Are we talking dozens? Are we talking hundreds? Or how much damage, or how far and widespread do you think this flooding is?
Probably at least 40.
So just overhearing Nick just now, he said it's about 40-ish businesses right here in the Sponge Docks, and they're all dealing with this flood right now. Now, we have seen sandbags in front of their doors all day. They boarded their windows. They had sandbags in front of the doors. Some of the businesses way down there had some metal barriers as well. So they prepared, but as we heard them say, this is historic to them because the water has not been this high before. So as you mentioned, once the light comes, once the sun comes out and we're able to actually see what's going on, we'll get a real assessment of the water damage.
Yeah, and this is dirty water. I mean, this is not clean water going into your building, and that's a whole different problem for a lot of folks. It's dirty, it's dangerous. There's just a lot in that water, and it's tough to recover from it. It takes a lot of work to mitigate that.
And I mean, the damage that salt water does to a lot of things, including, we talked about that, right, Dave? The lithium ion batteries. It could be a Tesla. It could be your kid's hoverboard. All of those things can be corroded by that salt water. That is to say the least about the damage that we're seeing. We do have, I think, a look live at Cedar Key right now. This is an area, to get a view of that. 10:25 right now, and look right there. Grainy picture, but you can see that water pushing in.
Yeah, and this is just multiplied by many, many communities across the Tampa Bay area, and it's difficult to tell when you look at a picture like this or a live shot, just how much water that is. But you can see
it moving.
It's moving water,
Right.
And we've been seeing moving water up in Crystal River as well. Aaron Parsegian is up that way, keeping an eye on things for us there. Aaron, is it? I think last time we checked with you, maybe it was kind of stabilizing just a bit. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was pretty medium level at this point when we're checking the water levels here on Kings Bay, but we can start to see it slowly rising in this area, and that's because of some of these big gusts of winds we're seeing. If you can check out this little inlet behind me, this goes right out to Kings Bay. On the other side is US 19. Water not approaching there yet, but you can see how choppy this water is back here with some of this wind blowing. So this is obviously the time of the night where we start to get concerned for that level of potential storm surge that this area could see. When we're talking several feet, that's definitely enough water to go up onto the road, start to go into businesses and some of the homes that live around Kings Bay. That's why this is part of the evacuation zone. Leading up to this storm, emergency officials here in Citrus County were talking about the need to evacuate because of how life-threatening storm surge can be. And in fact, we were staying at a hotel in Lecanto about 20 minutes away. Most of the people there are evacuees from this area of Crystal River because they're not taking any chances. They've been through a lot in the past year and some change. We're talking about 3 different storms dating back to Hurricane Italia, then Hurricane Debbie, and now this one. So this is what they've been keeping a close eye on. It's that time of the night where this concern for storm surge here in Kings Bay, where a lot of this water ends up filtering out into the streets and these surrounding neighborhoods, is really coming into focus.
Hey, Aaron, we see the lights on behind you there, and I'm not sure if that's a generator back there or what. As you look around, we have hundreds of thousands of power outages across the state of Florida right now. How is power in that area? Does it appear they've lost a lot of their power?
Well, there's definitely some outages. We took a drive around town probably about an hour ago. Many of the street lights were off. And at one point in the night, we definitely heard what sounded like a transformer blowing. So that definitely is a concern. Some tree limbs here and there just from the sheer strength of the wind. But of course, the main concern here is going to be that storm surge as we approach later into the night and early tomorrow morning with these areas all around Kings Bay.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much, live in Crystal River. And we've been checking in. It's interesting to see the things that have changed and how quickly they've changed and kind of where we are. It gives a really nice perspective of what we're, kind of that baseline of what we're seeing. You are joining us here on 10 Tampa Bay. I'm Courtney Robinson along with Dave Wagner, and we are here keeping you informed, prepared, and connected with our coverage of Hurricane Helene. 10:30 now. We are, about an hour, a little bit more than an hour away from potential landfall of Hurricane Helene as a Category 4 storm in that Big Bend area. And we have been showing you the surge that we have seen in the Tampa Bay region, all of that water. It's also caused a lot of power outages as well. Yeah, I mean, that storm is well past us at this point, but there's quite a surge of water left behind and a lot of power outages as well. Hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Florida right now are without power, many of those in the Tampa Bay area and north. And as that hurricane makes landfall, there will be an increasing number of people in the state without power. Right. Looking at numbers, and again, those power crews, they're out right now. There's also many on standby in the state, to get to the hardest hit areas where that, there are so many with the wind that they're going to see north of us that will be without power. Duke, 207,000 customers without power. Tico, almost 90,000. And when we look at Florida Power and Light, Sarasota's got 42,000, Manatee 35,000. So quite a bit. Yeah. Keeping an eye on things. Bobby, you have something for us here.
Yeah, well, let's just kind of reset where we are here because we're getting close to landfall with the storm here. 140 mile per hour winds as of 10 o'clock. You can see where it is. It's right there. The pressure's down to 939. That's about 65 miles northwest of Cedar Key. So here goes the forecast track, as you can see, and I'll get into here tight in just a minute, but you can see it's going to be producing hurricane force winds all the way up through central Georgia. All right, then it will fall apart. Now, let's talk surge. So these are tide levels. This one is at Cedar Key, and this is amazing. They are going into major flooding right now. The red line that you see here is the actual measured level of the water in Cedar Key, and they're very close to that eye wall. They're actually a little bit to the east of it. Places like Horseshoe Beach, they're going to be actually closer to the eye wall and will have more storm surge. But that's amazing right there, those numbers. Here, obviously, here's where the level should be. It should be down here by about maybe about a foot or so, and it's going to be all the way up there at 6-7 feet. So that was Cedar Key. That's the highest. This one's important too because this is Clearwater Beach, but look what's happened. It started to crest a little bit here and will slowly start to come down. See the tides? The tide's not going to let it come down a whole lot, but the part that's being driven by water, which has gotten it way up here, that part will start to come down. So you actually will see it start to come down just a little bit here over the next couple of hours. All right, so that's actually a little bit of good news. There's the eye wall on the satellite. You can see it's just about there. See all the little wobbles that it does? And you get those really because we're looking at it on radar. It's likely doing that even when we don't have it, when it's down in the Northwest Caribbean, right? Because we just don't have much radar there. Here's the picture of the radar now. You can see very heavy rainfall just west of Crystal River. That northern eye wall is now moving right into the area. This is the radar from up there. And look at the still thunderstorms, still lightning around this on both sides of the eye now. And that's an indication it still probably has about 130 to 140 mile per hour winds. They've got it at 140 right now. But you can see where Tallahassee is. They're going to miss the heaviest wind, which is right in here, but they're going to get a lot of wind. And unfortunately, it looks like Perry is going to be very close to the center of this. And they are just now getting that very, very heavy wind. Of course, the rainfall that's coming through. But they're basically getting in that northern eye wall. This is Horseshoe Beach. That's what I was saying. They have more surge, I think, than even Cedar Key. And that is, even though you don't see rain right here, there's a ton of wind blowing right straight onto the coast in Horseshoe Beach. They are just outside that southeast eye wall. Cedar Key, that's where we had that very high major flooding category surge just now. And Yankeetown, a little bit inland, but not by much. Nothing's really too far inland up there. The center now from Clearwater Beach is about 128 miles north-northwest. So moving at 24 miles per hour, that's definitely going to pull it away from here pretty quickly. Look at all the rain, though. I mean, we still got these heavier bands that are offshore. You can see the center from the hurricane center. It's going to probably end up just a little bit right about there. For us, we still have thunderstorms developing. Crystal River, Aaron's going to start hearing it. He's probably already hearing it. You're seeing some light flashing out there. Some of that's thunderstorms. And some of these cells here are heavy. Look how they're kind of merging together a little bit right there. That helps to squeeze out some moisture. And so we've had a little bit of a break on this US 19 corridor for Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus. But that's about to change. We've got some heavier rain coming through. Fortunately, there's not a lot of people out, but this is the type of rain that will cause some minor flooding on the roads and that type of thing. Again, if you live in one of these areas where you get 2 inches or so of rain in a short amount of time and it floods, probably going to have that happen this evening. Well, literally 3 to 6 inches of rain, and I think 6 is on the high side. These areas probably going to end up all in all about 2 to 3 inches right along the immediate coast. Very sporadic rain for our inland friends, Polk County, Haines City, Lakeland, Lake Wales, Fort Meade. Heavier rain now coming in from Clearwater, Bel Air Beach, all the way up to Dunedin, Tarpon Springs, Trinity, Newport Richey, Port Richey, and Hudson. We're basically going to see that continue to break up further south you go. So Manatee, Sarasota County, boy, do I know you're happy that you didn't get all that rain that you got from Debbie, that's for sure. But we do have that heavier rain moving out into Highlands County right now. So the number of, well, let's look at the precip totals here, right? This is estimated by the Doppler, but you can see 1 to 2 inches. Some spots, there's obviously local spots I've seen more than that, but 1/2 inch for inland counties, and some areas didn't even see that. again, we have another inch or so to add to these numbers. So rainfall is not going to be the primary threat from this, but it is certainly going to add to the mess of all of this. So one last thing here, guys, and then I'll toss it back to you. I did want to measure. We're talking about the size of this. This is just the extent of basically the rain from it. About 1,000 miles. It's raining right now in parts of southern Ohio, while at the same time there are rain bands down towards Key West from this one system. It is kind of merging with some systems up there, but literally you can see how it's all rotating up there. And then there's rain in almost Mississippi, West Tennessee. At the same time, there's rain on just about to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. That's a big reach. The core of the winds right in here, that's about 450 miles. That's one of the main reasons why we saw so much surge here in the Tampa Bay area.
Wow, that is one massive storm system there, and it just affecting so much of the country and will continue for days to come here.
And I'm just checking in right now too with different friends and that sort of thing who are in their homes and trying to see, you know, especially in areas that we can't get to, what things are looking like, and it's a lot of water. It's a lot of water.
Yeah. Helene is in a place where there is a lot of water as well, Hernando County. She joins us live right now. Hannah, how have things changed for you?
Well, Dave, the last time you checked in with me, I was out in Hernando Beach, and I saw about a foot of water rush in just 30 minutes. That water was rising incredibly quickly, and for those who are familiar with the area, you know that there are very few roads that go in and out of the Hernando Beach area, of all the coastal parts of Hernando County, and all of those roads are prone to flooding. So we knew that we're at risk of getting stuck out there if we stayed much longer. So we decided to drive inland closer to Brooksville, and as we were driving, we came to this intersection here. It's Cortez Boulevard and Commercial, and you can see just ahead, blocking Cortez going toward the beach, there is a roadblock. There is no one getting by that officer there. They tell me that because of the storm surge, because of debris in the roadway now, and also because of some down power lines in the road, again, no one is getting by them despite if they have proof of address, if they live in the area. They are keeping everyone out at this point for their own safety. Just on our own drive through that area down Cortez, we did see a lot of debris in the roadway. We saw a tree that had fallen over that had partially blocked Cortez Boulevard. We did just see some utility crews go beyond that cop car there, and I'm sure that they are on their way to tackle that downed tree. But again, at this point, no one except for first responders and those utility crews will be making their way from this area towards Hernando Beach. In Hernando County, Hannah Deneen, 10 Tampa Bay.
Hannah, I'm glad you went to higher ground there, to a safer place. Good to have you with us again. Thanks for letting us know what's going on there in Hernando County.
And that water does come up quickly. I want to give you a look here in Tampa. We have the Courtney Campbell Causeway by Gators Pass, kind of looking toward downtown Tampa. I mean, okay, so here you can see, you know, law enforcement really having to block the road off because there is water, you know, on the roadway. The Courtney Campbell closed this evening. I'm trying to remember exactly when. It was probably around 5 o'clock at this point. It's been closed for some time as Florida Highway Patrol and the counties really started to make sure that people were, you know, sheltering in place at that point, you know, and staying out of, you know, areas where so much water just coming over, crashing over from those rocks.
Right. And all the bridges, all the major bridges, the Courtney Campbell, the Gandy, the Howard Franklin, the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, they're all closed. Keep in mind, we do not have a time as to when those may reopen. I've been seeing people talking online. Do you know when the Gandy Bridge is going to reopen, or the Howard Franklin? We don't know at this point. They won't be reopened until they're deemed to be safe. And hopefully that'll be sooner than later. We also don't know. We saw all those heavy you know, waves rocking the Howard Franklin.
Right.
We don't know if there's any damage this time around because it has been damaged in the past. So that'll have to be dealt with if indeed there are problems there.
And also, you know, priorities. Yes, it does cripple the area in terms of being able to you know, get from Pinellas, get from Tampa. But there are also people who are going to need to be rescued. We've heard from each of our reporters saying that they have been in touch with law enforcement or officials in their communities, and that there were rescues that were happening, be it fires, be it high water, car crashes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Aduria Chumba is in downtown St. Pete, and you are you look like you maybe are in a different location or a different position there. Aduria, what are you seeing there? What are the winds like? What is the water like there?
Right now, the winds are intensifying. We're hearing the howling blowing in downtown St. Petersburg right now. And we're getting reports already of power outages and light poles and transformers on fire. Right now, nearly 300,000 people have lost power. We're also getting reports of water rescues, and some of the law enforcement also not conducting any more rescues because it's putting their personnel in harm's way because of how intense this is becoming. As you can see, you can hear it. The wind is really picking up on this side, and you can see the trees being swept around because of just how intense those winds are. Now, earlier in the day, when it was still daylight, we were over by the St. Pete Pier, and we watched as the storm surge was slowly building up and throughout the day, and we saw that the water start spilling over and breaching the seawall there. And at that point, people started clearing out of that area. Again, the prediction of upwards of 8 feet of storm surge. We know that some places like Clearwater have already seen 6 feet of storm surge as well. Again, we are still not at the height of the storm and what it's supposed to bring, what it's predicted to bring. So law enforcement, they're reminding folks, shelter in place. Do not try to get out on the roads, and if you're taking in water, get to higher ground, because at this time it's not safe to get people out there. So get to higher ground. Live in St. Petersburg, Aduria Chumba, 10 Tampa Bay.
All right, Aduria, thank you so much. Let's touch base on the other side of the bay. I mentioned earlier trying to check in on people, see what we were seeing. When we talk about Bayshore Boulevard, we often think of that beautiful stretch with the balustrade, but it extends so much farther south of Gandy, and that is an area where we are seeing it. This is a home that's kind of near MacDill Air Force Base, closer to MacDill, along Bayshore. So that is the bay in the backyard.
Is on stilts there?
No, it is not on stilts. That is just, there's actually a dock that you might be able to see kind of it off in the distance where that blue light is. That right there is kind of that boat. Dock. And anyway, so it's coming in, and you can see the planter right there, going up over several steps. There's also right there with the fire pit that you can see. So I would say standing there, probably up to my kneecaps,
oh my goodness.
which would be maybe 1.5 feet right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry for your friend and her family. I know that's really just an awful, awful thing to deal with. You know, it's sort of the beauty and the curse of living in a place like this, and we certainly have seen changes in these storms over the past few years. So it's been a challenge for anybody who's even remotely close to water, and a lot of folks who aren't close to the water as well.
Yeah, and you know, in this situation, right, heeding that evacuation, so you know they're safe, they're kind of nearby. But then checking in just a little bit farther inland with like the Inner Bay area. No water right there.
Yeah, kind of hit and miss.
Hit and miss, but no power.
Tropicana Field also hit by this storm. Take a look right here if you can. This right here, this is one of the signs outside here, a home of the Rays. It is a number of these around, but yeah, it has been kind of pushed over. Don't know whether or not, I'm assuming that is wind, and hopefully that's something that can be righted there. But, you know, this is just an example. It is, you know, sometimes it's the most kind of bizarre and random thing that gets damaged in these storms. And that's one of them right there at Tropicana Field in downtown St. Pete.
Gusts in the upper 70s to near 80 in St. Pete.
Makes sense. So, I mean, you would think some of these things would be able to withstand winds, but they haven't really been tested sometimes, some of these things. So hopefully they can they can fix that down there.
Let's take a look at TGH. Eric Glasser, when he was live just a bit ago, sharing that there's a lot of activity happening at Tampa General Hospital, and you can see right there, that's that ramp. You know, as you're coming on to Davis Islands and you look over toward TGH, there's that the ramp, the parking garage. Just it's inundated, and you know, I'm trying to get another perspective here. Just a lot of water just rushing through, but they are.
Look at the cars in there,
wow.
Vehicles in there, yeah. And this building is surrounded by kind of this water barrier, this new thing they spent a lot of money on to try to contain it and keep the floodwaters out. Obviously, there are generators for the folks there, but this rushing water is just so devastating. You just wonder how many cars are in there. Hopefully not that many on the first floor.
Right.
But it says visitor parking, and we just, people are going through enough when they're in the hospital. They don't need this.
Right. And Mayor Castor, I can't remember if it was earlier today or yesterday, at this point, they opened up the parking garages for the city for people who needed to move there, people who lived on Davis Islands or, lived in some of these low-lying areas in the city of Tampa to, put their cars in that. There you go.
Look at this. This is US 19 at Curlew Road. This is in Dunedin. And wow, look how deep that water is.
Wow.
I mean, and yeah, I mean, and that's, that's not waterfront, waterfront area there. So it is, wow, that is amazing. And you think about all the homes and businesses around that area, pretty heavily populated area, and just a beautiful community there. You just wonder how much damage there is, but we've seen this scene repeated and repeated and repeated throughout our coverage area. Bobby,
is that old 19?
Yeah, that's
gotta be old.
Oh, it's probably is old 19.
I was just looking it up right now because we both kind of.
Yes.
Home Depot would be flooded.
No, that's Home Depot. It's right near Home Depot, right?
Is that?
Or that's alternate 19. No, that's closer.
That's old 19.
No, that's
alt 19.
Okay, that's the old one. You're right.
There's no way
you're
to
right.
get that much water. That's a big ridge up there.
Yeah, but still, that's a lot of water for that area there, and we still have, Bobby, we still haven't technically reached peak storm surge.
No, we haven't. We have not at this point. Clearwater Beach's level did look like it's starting to crest a little bit, so that's good news.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the cresting will happen within the next hour or two.
Okay.
All right. Lee was just talking, in charge of our building. He was just asking. We've got about 6 inches in our parking lot, and I can show you that. If you guys want to take my weather computer briefly, I can show you that. That's why we're not at the TV station, because even though it's not going to get in the building, you can see that the building is surrounded by water right now, and you don't want
This is
cars
directly on the inland waters of Tampa Bay. Our station is this little building. That's not our television station right there. That's actually what used to be our landing pad for our helicopter, but it's now kind of a picnic area.
Became the Dodge Jeep Chrysler Weather Center for some time.
Yep, absolutely.
Now it's home to otters.
Yeah, that's right.
And no-see-ums.
Yes. So, and we normally this is not covered in water there normally, but it's
even in heavy rain, it's not like this.
No.
So Lee's question was, if it comes like another 1 to 2 hours before it crests, which I think 2 is probably long, maybe another hour, is it enough time to get another 2 foot of water there? Because that would be his concern with that level, and I don't think it is. I don't think we'd see another 2 foot of level anywhere, especially in the Tampa Bay area. Perhaps up into Crystal River area, because they still have a little bit more time than we do. But I think that. I mean, if we even saw another foot, I'd be surprised.
So, we don't want to focus too much on ourselves, because there's so many people out there who've lost so much.
This is just a marker.
No,
yes, but Bobby, I wanted to ask you, looking at this video here right now, how long before this is likely to recede and it would be a dry parking lot?
That's probably going to take, I'd say, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning for that to happen. Because what's going to happen is, and it came up quick, it won't go down as quick. But I think we were talking to Aaron said it was this high, but then it actually did start to come down a few inches. He was talking to somebody up there. That'll be kind of the nature. Meanwhile, at Port Manatee, we had it come up 1.5 foot in 30 minutes earlier. That's not going to drop 1.5 foot in half an hour, right? That's not going to happen. It'll slowly come down. Remember, we've got high tide in this area, and this is Feather Sound, this is Gandy Boulevard, this is Shore Acres area, right? In that part of central Pinellas, southeast Pinellas. we have high tide there around 2 in the morning. So the moon's pulling the water up anyways, but the amount of wind that went on top of that lunar tide is coming down, and so the water level will come down just a little bit, but it's not going to be a whole lot. It'll be more so after we get past 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for most areas. Then it'll start to drop off.
Yeah, and we know what's oftentimes in the waters there beyond the fish and whatever. There are snakes in the area. There are all kinds of little critters. So when you're getting out there, keep in mind that the area that you're walking in, animals may have sort of drifted your way. It could be alligators, it could
Red
be
ants
snakes,
float.
red ants, all kinds of things. So it's and certainly we're not even talking about some of the toxic chemicals and the oil and everything else that you could be exposed to. So just be really careful in the water. You don't want it to have contact with your skin. I know some people want to walk around in it, and that's not a good idea with moving water. But I understand the temptation. But just keep in mind that some of the stuff in the water is pretty dangerous.
Wow. And speaking of that the Northeast sewer treatment plant,
yes.
that is now offline. So listen, if you live north, if you live or if you work north of 30th Avenue North and kind of east of 275 Haynes Road in St. Pete, you're going to be impacted by this. So we're talking, you don't have, water for your toilets, showers, all of that.
All that stuff.
And again, the sewer treatment plant offline.
Yeah,
So
Fort Myers really took a hit from Ian here, and I want to show you some video right now, if we can, of some of the wind. This is from earlier today, and some of the problems they had as a result of that wind. If we have the video, maybe we don't at this point.
they're working.
Okay, maybe working on it here. So we'll just sort of talk. Bobby, yes.
That I wanted to point out something that what Courtney was just talking about. That city of St. Petersburg, the Northeast sewage plant.
Yes.
Some of the things that they were saying is, do not drain water in any part of your house. So don't take a shower, don't do laundry, as you said, don't flush toilets. That water that you try to drain down there will back up in your house.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why you can't do that.
No. Yeah. And then, we talk about after storms move through, right? Like you don't want to be, don't do in your washing machine, doing your wash.
Drinking the water, taking baths.
Turning on the bath, exactly. We do have a live picture. I don't think we have Fort Myers right now, but we do have a live picture of the downtown Tampa camera that we have, and it is looking right now at Tampa General Hospital. So this is a live look for you there, and you can see the camera's still shaking, and look at the water right there kind of going up. That's that flood wall. Is that flood wall?
I believe. Yeah, and what are the wind speeds, Bobby, right now down like around Tampa General, downtown Tampa? Do you have a sense?
Yeah. Let me
he's
going
to check on that for us. But
that flood wall is getting a workout.
Yeah, they put sort of this vapor barrier, water barrier there, and newfangled kind of thing that seems to have worked well in the past. But this is an unusual storm. Obviously, we saw water getting into at least the first floor of the parking garage there.
Right.
So we know we saw
garage.
at least one vehicle's damaged, and we assume there probably are more as well, but hopefully some of those have been parked a little higher. Bobby is checking on wind speeds down there. It's just, the camera's shaking, so you kind of question what we're talking.
They're blowing 37 miles per hour, gusting in the mid to upper 50s right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. 37 to upper 50s.
What we can't often see, right? When we look, we can see the water and you can see it moving, but to get those speeds, it's not calm out there.
Yeah. Chris Hurst is joining us live right now from Venice. He's been keeping tabs on people down there and the floodwaters down there. And Chris, boy, what a different scene behind you than we saw maybe a half hour ago or so. I'm assuming you're in the same area. Is this the same area? You haven't moved?
Where that got towed, the car?
Yeah, we haven't moved. We did see another car get towed. It's about 20 yards in front of me, a Chrysler that also got flooded out. So we've seen two cars here along Tamiami Trail, US 41, downtown Venice, a couple of miles south of here. We are just outside of Nokomis, where you can still see that we have the Tamiami Trail here covered in both directions. People still are trying to move through this floodwater in their cars, some successful, some not successful. We were talking last time, Dave and Courtney, about the water level here in southern Sarasota County. It still looks pretty consistent. It doesn't seem to be rising up any more at the moment like it has been for the past several hours, but still the water covering roadways. There was a paramedic who was actually here just a little while ago, and then he left, but he was going to check on that car that was flooded out, that second car that I didn't have a chance to get to show you. And I asked him, what is it like? And just from what he said they're backed up right now with 60 calls for service that they're trying to get to. I said, why haven't law enforcement closed down this road? And I just simply don't think that there are enough units to go around right now. They are attempting to do swift water rescues, not only here in southern Sarasota County, but apparently also there are calls for aid in Charlotte County. Some fires that have occurred here as Helene has moved through our area that they still have not been able to put out because of the rising water. And the last time I talked to that EMT, he said they're trying to get a boat out here to maybe be able to go home by home to see if the folks here need to be rescued, if they have an ability, if they didn't evacuate, to maybe ride it out. I can say that at least the wind has definitely died down from the gusts we saw crossing over 80 miles an hour, sustained winds into the 60s we had for much of the afternoon. But the wind has died down, and certainly the rain has not been here in any way that could have contributed seriously to what is already multi-foot storm surge, and a storm surge that is still covering a lot of roadways and going right now, Courtney and Dave, continuing into people's neighborhoods and into people's homes.
All right, Chris Hurst live for us in Venice. We're coming up here on 11 o'clock. We do want to, I think, take a look at where things stand with Hurricane Helene at this moment.
Yeah, Bobby's keeping an eye on things for us, has been all day, and as we have for several days now, Bobby.
Yeah. Cone of overtime, we call that, right? We want to be making sure that we're watching outside for those water levels to start coming down just a little bit. I want everybody that's worried about those water levels to know that they are going to be cresting here shortly in the Tampa Bay area. All right, here's the latest on Helene. 140 mile per hour winds. It's moving to the northeast at 24. 939 is the pressure. That hasn't changed much. What has changed is it's just about ready to make landfall. It's very, very close to that happening right now. It's 65 miles west-northwest of Cedar Key. I'll show you. That's about 90 miles from Crystal River. There it is. Almost official landfall. And actually, Colleen, we should be keeping an eye on that because they're going to issue something right in here. Keaton Beach is the place. There's Perry. Perry, yep, definitely going to be very close to Perry as well. But there's a couple small little places they call beaches down there. That's basically Keaton Beach, Deckle Beach, and over towards Fish Creek. That's going to be pretty much where the center of the eye goes on shore. That's what we figure out is the center, obviously, of the storm. Again, that's about 90 miles or so northwest of Crystal River, just behind the banner there. But you can see, look at still thunderstorms on the north and west side of this thing. It's actually a pretty good thunderstorm rolling through the Crystal River area right now. So very heavy rainfall in that area. They'll get more there than what we got, for sure, because they're just closer to the center where the more steady rainfall is. But you can see it's about 128 miles, probably 135 miles now from here in the Tampa area and moving further away. And that will continue. And basically, we're going to be left over with these scattered showers. A little bit heavier now for northern Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus counties. The heavier band that we saw earlier now out in the southeast Polk County and into Highlands County. Luckily, we don't have any spin-ups in there, and that was the one that we're really watching. We will still be watching for it in this area too, and we still have a tornado watch, basically Pinellas, Hillsborough, Polk counties northward for the next several hours. Technically, it goes until 6 a.m., but that's for the northern part of it. Ours will come out sooner than that. We will not have a tornado threat, I don't think, through 6 a.m. The winds right now, let's take a look at those. 38 in St. Pete is a sustained wind, steady wind. 58 mile per hour winds. I want to take you down to Sarasota. It's still blowing in the 30s, 49 mile per hour wind. Guys, when the sun comes up tomorrow, this water's coming out slowly overnight. There's a lot of stuff tore up on these beaches. I'm seeing pics and video from the north end of Anna Maria Island with about that much water, about 3 to 4 feet of water over parts of the island.